That's your singing look, huh?
And then right and left to go through the slides, and then a little laser pointer if you want it.
Cool.
Yep. And I'll go make sure.
For the Braves, A's, Padres, Twins, and Red Sox. He is a Major League Baseball consultant, keynote speaker, and leadership coach. What do you got, Dr. Steve?
All right. I got chatting, so I gotta find this.
What's up, brother? Mike.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Harley Anderson. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Interesting about himself, I was a pre-med undergrad, and I have coached baseball on 6 continents. That's pretty badass.
I'm working on 7.
Antarctica.
Working on 7.
You got that 7?
And working on some penguins.
That's good. And also, your 20-year-old self, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, so pick your friends wisely. All right, Mike.
Not you. All right. I appreciate y'all having me. So KPIs stands for Key Performance Indicators for pitching velocity and injury prevention. If you guys don't know, this is Jake McGee. He's actually a Reno born and raised. So he lives still here in town. I get to chat with him a lot. He pitched for the Giants, Rays, and a handful of other teams, but absolute stud. So, all right. So who is, let's see. Oh, there it goes. Who's Mike McCarthy? So, shoot. Sorry, wrong slide. Did you put that? Just kidding. All right, that's me there. Yeah, as noted, coached in the big leagues with the A's, coached in the minor leagues with the Braves, Padres, Twins. Played in the minor leagues with the Red Sox. Was a D1 All-American. After going to a D3 school, I wanted to go to medical school, and honestly, I was in the same classroom as you guys. Not at UNR, but University of Redlands, and then Cal State Bakersfield. And, I didn't know that I would ever get a chance to play professional baseball. I never thought that'd be even a chance to play Division I baseball. So the opportunities I've gotten are some that I never ever thought possible. And then currently do baseball consulting for big league and college players, keynote speaking, and leadership men's performance coaching. Quick note here at the bottom, think of me as a mechanic. Okay, I'm gonna use this analogy the rest of the way, okay? So what is biomechanics? And I had to Google this. The science of the movement of a living body, including how muscles, bones, tendons, and ligaments work to move together. And so you can see here the progression of the delivery for a pitcher. AKA how your body moves. So think of this now as your car, okay? So I'm your mechanic. The pitching delivery, the biomechanics are the car. There it goes. So what are kinematics? The motion of objects without reference, the forces which cause the motion. Again, I had to Google that one. What are we looking at here on the screen? These are angular rotation speeds over time. And so we can track different things like the pelvis, the trunk, the elbow, shoulders, hand, and we can see how fast they're moving. So these are in degrees per second. Then we can see speed gains over time. So that's what these waves are telling us in terms of peak speed gains. So when we look at that, we can tell how fast the pelvis is rotating, how fast the shoulders are rotating, the elbow, the hand, and we can look at how these forces are stacking on top of each other. I like to think of this as like a 4-stage or 5-stage rocket. The pelvis is rocket number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5. If number 1 doesn't do its job, number 2 has to make up the difference. If number 2 doesn't make up the difference, guess what happens? Number 3 has to try to make it up. And we're already moving faster and faster and faster. And so when stuff tries to do more than it can, we end up with injuries. That's why we see so many elbow and shoulder injuries. Think of this kind of like the wave of energy moving, a wave of energy moving like a whip. We're trying to get the sequence to work from the ground through the hand and eventually into the ball, into the bat, into the golf head club, into the volleyball, tennis racket, etc. Think of this as the drivetrain in your car. So if you guys don't like cars, this is a really bad presentation. Hopefully you guys like them. So your kinematic sequence here, you can see hips, trunk, arm, hand, and see how these are stacking. You can see as it turns red, that's telling you when peak force is being applied, right? Excuse me, green is when it's peak force being applied for each of those segments. And so this is a wave of energy working from the ground up through the body, hips, chest, elbow, hand. These principles hold true in hitting, golf, volleyball, and almost any other sport. Again, still thinking this is the drivetrain of your car. So injury prevention, right? This is one of the areas I work in a lot. My goal is for Mike to never have any visitors, at least from baseball, is my goal. I told Chris Dolan, his orthopedist in town, the same thing. Like, my goal is to make sure that players don't ever get to those offices. Instead of going to see a doctor, I hope that they stay on the field the entire time. So when I look at this, what are the big KPIs, those key performance indicators? Number one is external rotation at foot strike. So when this front foot hits the ground, that's called a closed chain. Until it hits the ground, it's an open chain. We really don't see any injuries before the chain is closed. Where we see the injuries start to occur is after the chain is closed. So once this front foot hits the ground, we've created tons of valgus torque on the elbow as it rotates. External rotation at foot contact, 30 to 70 degrees. So you can see that here, right? Shoulder abduction at foot contact, roughly 90 degrees. That's where we want to be at there. And then elbow flexion at foot contact, roughly 90 degrees. So with this player, this is a guy I was working on in Minnesota. I was coaching for the Atlanta Braves at the time. And these are the key KPIs that we're looking for. So now think of this kind of like the alignment of your car, right? If you have wheels that are offset and moving in the wrong directions, not only does your car pull off the side of the road, but we tend to blow out tires faster. We tend to have more strain on the chassis. We tend to drive poorer or weaker. We tend to have more blowouts, and we tend to have more accidents. Makes sense. Okay, so more injury prevention here. Like, what are the correlations between velocity production and injury prevention? If we can tie those two together, it keeps you on the field performing well because you're really good and you're not sitting on the bench. But then also you're staying on the field because you're healthy. If you could do both those together, that's the holy grail, right? So there's four main things that we've seen that have really led to that, right? And these are shown here, moving from blue to red. That movement from blue to red, the more extreme that is, the better it is. So a few of the big things: high lead arm momentum. So that front arm, that glove side arm, getting good momentum in terms of rotational speed. High torso momentum, right? Obviously, these make sense. My arms move faster, my torso moves faster, we're better off. High alignment between torso and pitching arm rotational planes. Probably one of the ones that is not understood the best and the least coached I've seen in professional baseball, but also in youth baseball. Basically what it's saying is if my chest is going this way and my arm goes this way, that gap is a massive correlation with injuries. We want those to stack on each other, right? So imagine a rocket going like this and the other one takes off going this way. That's not going to work out very well, right? We need those rockets to stack. And then last one is lead knee extension speed. So basically, the faster that lead knee extends, the faster the pelvis rotates. We send more early energy up the chain. You'll be able to see that in a video here. Ground force. We can track through this, basically, the understanding of how we're putting force on the ground, how we're putting force forward and back, basically home to second, and first to third. If we can track how those forces are created, we now understand how the body is putting force on the ground and creating its rotational energy up the chain. Again, that whip. So think of this kind of like your tires, brakes, and suspension. How we interact with the ground is crucial. You could have a huge 600 horsepower engine. We've got horrible tires. What's going to happen? Probably going to blow out, right? We have really, really good tires, but if we've got a 100 horsepower engine, we're probably not going to go very fast. That's what we try to look for in this ground force data. So all of these play into each other. So what does 103 miles an hour look like? This is, if you guys don't know, this is Mason Miller, plays for the Oakland A's, one of the hardest throwers in baseball. He has the highest average fastball velocity in all of the major leagues. He throws on average over 101 miles an hour. Think of this guy as your F1 race car. Boom. Pelvis, shoulder, elbow, hand. That sequence, huge lead knee extension speed, those sequences matter. His torso and his hand correlate almost perfectly. What does a 450-foot home run look like? This guy has some of the biggest juice in all of baseball, and he weighs about 180 pounds. I played with him throughout my career. Again, F1 race car. Pelvis, shoulder, elbow, hand, and in this case, the bat. You can take this into volleyball, you can take this into golf, whatever you want to look at. Any questions you guys got? Go ahead.
How do you coach the alignment between the torso and the pitching? Since that's something important.
Great question. So how do you coach the torso and the pitching arm? We have a huge list of drills that we work through. And we basically are looking at what is it, just like a treatment plan or anything else, like what are those drills that are going to correlate best with that player? When we see some type of deviation like that, we really want to make sure that we look at for drills that are going to help them. This may also be a posture issue, right? So we could see if the chassis is misaligned and the car is pulling to the right, and we just keep pulling it back to the left, we're not going to be very good on the racetrack, right? So with that body, if we see that the body from a posture standpoint is really anterior biased, right? So somebody is really heel toe heavy goes this way. They're doing forward lunges. They're doing front squat or back squat, everything is putting them into a posterior to anterior bias position. So what we can do in things like the weight room, front load them. We can reverse lunge them, right? We can put them into positions that are going to help move their posture in a better position, realigning the chassis. We could also do things that are going to address the drill pattern of how they're moving with their torso and their hand. So part of this is the artisanship of coaching for sure.
Like, you see a lot of young kids, and they got a lot of things going on. You just kind of, like, when I look at them, I almost cringe because they have a lot going on. Is there a place that you start with your throwers to try to, like, work on this first, or is it just always just a thing?
Like a 14-year-old 6'5" giraffe that's in high school, named AJ. Yeah, when I look at things, I'm looking for those KPIs. So my goal is to keep you healthy, right? Number one. So the first thing that I flag is, are we breaking into those big KPIs? If we're going to get you injured, there's no point in putting your horsepower into a crappy car, right? If you got a jalopy outside, you don't take an engine out of a Viper and try to throw it in that jalopy. That makes sense, right? That is intuitive. So I look for those things. Like, I don't want to get a player hurt. Number two, I want them to perform better, right? Parts of that is throwing strikes, having command, control their body, and I want them to throw harder, right? Those are the three main things that we can do. So I'm always going to start with injury prevention and start there. Are there any big things? So every player I touch and I work on, I go through a movement screen with them, right? And I'm doing a movement screen. Most of the time, I've had players come in, they'll like just be talking to me, and in about 3 minutes, I size them up. I'm like, I've got 80% of how their body moves already nailed down. And literally hitters, pitchers, et cetera, they'll tell me, yeah, this is what I'm struggling with in terms of missing with ball flight, or this is what my swing's doing. Here's where my power's at. I can literally look at their data, sometimes with this, and tell them exactly how their body's moving without ever watching them on video. That's how powerful the data is. That's how powerful knowing posture, body movements, et cetera, can be. So that's where I just start. Yes, sir.
How do you approach those people that might say, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it? Approach, like, maybe high-level collegiate or even pro athletes that maybe have different variations of the gym.
Yeah, I've had to deal with GMs that say that all the time with $20 million athletes, and you're just blown away that they don't want to touch it. It's a really difficult one, right? So sometimes you avoid having to address the question by already just, beg for forgiveness later, so to speak, as versus ask for permission. It's a really difficult one, right? It's a big challenge I run into morally and ethically, because with a young player, they're coming to me for information. In a professional organization, my paycheck is paid by the GM, right, and the ownership group that is expecting literally billions of dollars in revenue every year. And you're saying, whoa, okay, how do we help with this player? And honestly, sometimes that runs in misalignment. That's a really difficult one to handle. So it's a case-by-case basis. I'm usually pretty honest with players. I'm transparent with them. Like, look, here's some big things that are KPIs for me. These are things, and I can show them why, show them how. Last year, I got to work with Chris Sale in spring training. One of the best experiences I've ever had. He went out and won the Cy Young after 4 years straight of injuries, right? I was not the only one that helped him. Tons of people across the nation helped him. And it really does take a village for a lot of our athletes. But being able to take a guy that was broken and kept getting injured, and we were able to bring him back to health, take him from throwing 90, 91, 92 to touching 99 again, and putting him back into that top 1% was a really special experience. Part of it was just being honest with the player. Like, here's what you do when you throw 99. Here's you at 91. Here are my concerns. What do you see? Player says, oh, shoot. And Chris talks a little different than the rest of us, but a lot of F-bombs. But basically, why the F am I striding over there when I should be striding that way? That's all we need to know. Go get it. And that's it. Sometimes that's that simple. All this data culminates into just something that basic. You don't have any questions?
I've asked you enough.
No, you haven't. Good. I'm just kidding. I coached Seth for years, so I'm just giving him a hard time.
How did you get into the field of biomechanics? What did you study? How did you break into the whole area?
Number one, be inquisitive, right? And I know you want the process more, but be inquisitive of everything. If somebody's here and they're like, hey, this is how chairs are made, I'm going to listen. I just want to know. I want to better understand the body. I want to better understand how people move, mental models, et cetera. I'm taking a class just on mental models right now because I want to better understand how the mind and body relationship works. I was a pre-med undergrad. I was just inquisitive. I was dissecting cats and had formaldehyde all over my hands at 6 a.m, and then I'm pitching at 7 o'clock at night against Ohio State. That gap is the weirdest feeling in the world. Because nobody can understand it. I didn't have any teammates that were pre-med students. I didn't know that many pre-med students. And honestly, I would hide it, the fact that I was an athlete. But I was always interested. I was like, man, except for botany. I didn't like botany, sorry. Anybody liked botany, I'm sorry. But I was always interested in pathophys, physiology, all those things. And part of it was because like I had oral cancer as a kid. So I had like 3 surgeries on my face when I was 3 and 4 years old. I had benign spina bifida and was having issues like I was always slipping my SI joint, always having back pain. I didn't know why it was broken. And then once I started to realize, okay, I can help fix this. And then realizing every person in this room has something. So yeah, be inquisitive. Cool. Antarctica, if you guys want to go, we're going. Cool, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Sweet, thank you.